Welcome to Paint with me in Clip Studio Paint. Today we're going to take a pencil sketch and turn it into a shaded image like this. This is not a painting tutorial, but a walkthrough to explain the painting process. So it's intended for you to be able to walk along with it, so stop the video whenever you want, bring up your project, and then when you're ready, come back to this video and continue. If you need more help on how to use Clip Studio Paint, check out the other videos in this playlist and also the videos in the Clip Studio Paint How To playlist. So the first step is just to create a new file, so select File, New, and then select the size that you want. I wanted one that was 8.5 by 11 but in landscape mode. Then just click OK, and that will bring up and start up a new file with the background as paper and layer 1 as the layer on top. The next step is to import the image. So you go to File, Import, Image, and then navigate to the location where your file is. And then just resize the file as appropriate and position it how you like. You may then also want to click on the padlock to lock that layer so you don't accidentally paint on top of it. The next step is to set up all your layers. Now going from the bottom, you actually don't need the paper layer. I'm going to create a background layer and color that later. But in addition, I've got the flats layer, which I will do all the painting on. Then I have a shades layer, a highlights layer, and then the image that I imported I renamed to original drawing. And finally on top we have an ink layer. Now all of these layers have a normal blending mode, except for shades. We want to change that to multiply. So I've switched into a version of the painting where I've already finished the artwork just to make it easier to see things. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to do our ink layer. So this is assuming that you want a line drawing based artwork. See my other videos for one that's more like traditional painting. So I'm going to just highlight this layer just by clicking on that little square and the eyeball comes up. So now you can see the ink layer and I can hide the original drawing. Now I've created a little muted background layer above the background. I've eliminated the paper layer. And the muted background is just there temporarily, so it's easier for us to see all the things. So the next step is to put in the flats to color those flats. Now the next step is the most important step of the process. It's where you're adding your shading. And just to show what it looks like, here's what the flats look like without the shading layer. And now I'm going to click on that layer and make it visible to see what the shading does to it. In addition, I can add the highlights and you can see what it looks all together. Now let me turn off the flats layer and the highlights layer just so that you can see the shading. And the thing that you should notice is that I am using actual tones for the flesh tone and the hair. Now all the shading is done on one layer. You don't have to do that. The more comfortable you are with actual painting, the more that you can just put it on a single layer. But in general you may use multiple layers to get things just right and then merge them together at the end. Now the highlights we don't have on the same layer because they have different blending types. So for example the shades use multiply and the highlights use normal. So let me just show you what those highlights look like. I'll hide the shades layer and then show the highlights layer. So here I'm just focusing on the specular type of highlights, but you can add ambient highlighting and ambient shading as well. And that's the essence of the process. And let me turn off the muted background, turn on the actual background, and turn on all the other layers, and that's your end result. In order to keep this video brief, I haven't gone into the details of actually how you do the shading with respect to the blending. And so I'm putting that in a separate video because it's fairly detailed information and takes a bit to describe. So if you need help with the general principles of shading within Clip Studio Paint, check out the video in the Paint With Me playlist. If you want to know specifics about individual blending approaches or shading approaches, check out the Clip Studio How To playlist. I hope you've enjoyed the video and enjoy painting digitally.